Remarkable careers don't just happen. They're defined by a person's culture, global culture, and the culture. It takes a bit of risk, an ability to adapt, and a lot of resilience. I'm Leila Fatah, and welcome to Cultural Voices, a series of unfiltered conversations with people shaping and representing culture and creativity. In this episode, I chat to stylist, fashion editor, and creative consultant Jeanie Annan-Lewin, aka Jeanius, whose original aspirations of art curation became the foundation of her creative expression into fashion, where she has and is becoming a defining presence. Discovered on Instagram, which she used as a visual diary only 5 or so years ago, Jeanie's eye quickly gained recognition, leading to editorial and commercial work across heavyweight titles such as ID, Italian Vogue, and Perfect magazine. Today, she's currently contributing fashion editor at British Vogue and has an ongoing collaboration with Tolu, bringing the designer's creative vision to life on the runway every season. Welcome to Cultural Voices, Jeanie. Full name, Jeanie Annan-Lewin. But I think most of you might know Jeanie as Jeanius from Instagram. So lovely to have you on the show today. Super excited to get a bit of an understanding of your incredible and remarkable career. And we'll jump into that in a bit. But first, love to understand a bit about Jeanie. And your upbringing and sort of personal background and how that has shaped how you see the world today. So let's talk about foundations. Tell me about yourself.
Well, I was born in East London, which is where I currently live, and grew up in South London. So I'm a bit of a rare one because I'm quite sort of attached to both areas, weirdly. Yeah. My mum's West African. I didn't really know my real father, but my stepfather is Jamaican. Mm-hmm. So we have a lot of kind of cross cultures. I don't know. The foundations of me is a bit shaky, really. I try and work it out day by day. I'm because I'm kind of like, I'm not particularly tied to anything. I'm just I absorbed a lot more than I thought I did, basically. So sort of growing up, I was obsessed with sort of dance and music and really, really into clothes, but couldn't work out why, sort of grew up with two very extroverted parents who didn't really kind of, I wasn't really steered in one direction. They were just sort of like, oh, you seem to be really fascinated by X, Y, and Z. But yeah, I was always a bit of a weird one.
Well, you know what? There's absolutely nothing wrong with that foundation. Let me tell you. No. I feel it's kind of similar. It adds a lot of layers. So we'll jump into kind of how that might have sort of shaped your career path actually in a bit. So do you think that you this kind of, I guess, way of being, of absorption, so you've called it, do you think that has instilled this perspective? Do you carry that in work still today?
I'm quite sensitive, and I've sort of recently discovered that I these sort of practices that I've had for years, I didn't really know kind of led and sort of fed into my work. So I kind of go into a space and sort of sit there really quietly, look around, lots of observing. Apparently I didn't really start speaking until I was about 5 when I was little. Okay. And it wasn't because I couldn't speak, it's because I chose not to. I was like a really quiet kid. Mm-hmm. So apparently I always knew what was happening, but I chose to communicate silently for ages. And then when I started talking, I wouldn't stop.
But you know what? I feel like actually, and that's something I need to learn a little bit more of, is to actually stop talking, because I get overexcited and I just, jump in. But actually, I think that probably taught you quite a big skill around listening, really listening.
Yeah.
That's a skill that still would take anyone much, much further, actually. And I think listening is a huge skill. I think going forward as well, it's bigger than before. I don't know what you think about that.
Yeah, I was just definitely an active listener and very much just paying attention to my surroundings. And it's something I do now. It's something I kind of like, I've been told I have a really good eye and I've got like really quite strong attention to detail. So it's something that's definitely sort of carried on through work. But I was always a bit like, I was, yeah, I sort of absorbed all sorts of things. So like I was quite obsessed with all sorts of different types of music. My brother was really into hip hop. I was into, like, my first album I bought was Nirvana, Nevermind. I was really into grunge, but then I also loved Notorious B.I.G. Like it was all, it's just kind of, I used to just be sort of obsessed with lots of things that were around me, which is sometimes really good, but then sometimes I get quite overwhelmed because if I'm trying to sort of put a mood board together or something like that, I draw inspiration from everywhere. So you'll look at it, you'll be like, "Oh, what is that?" But it makes sense to me. Do you know what I mean?
Totally. But you know what? Interestingly, hello, that has taken you very far in your industry. So I think we're gonna call that a plus, actually, because if we look at your body of work, let's talk about creative director at Perfect Magazine. Let's talk about contributing fashion editor at British Vogue. Let's talk about Nike, Chet, Burberry, right? Italian Vogue. I think you're doing okay with your weird and crazy mood board. So, we're going to look at that as like probably the thing that makes you unique. And I feel like that's something that should be absolutely celebrated.
Well, I studied art history, so I wanted to be an art curator originally. And basically, in order to be an art curator, you have to come from quite a bit of money. There aren't many people that come from like not very privileged backgrounds doing that, and nobody tells you that. So when I was studying art history in school, I was like, I'm going to be an art curator, and then I sort of did it in uni, and then I did an internship and realized that everybody around me did not look like me, and wasn't from where I was from. So that was really sort of sobering, but really good to kind of like learn my sort of eye, and I guess having an inspiration, sort of a way of really loving lots of different things because I sort of saw lots of different things in a really different perspective. But
I feel like that's all added value, though it probably didn't feel like that at the time. I mean, I understand that I come from, South Africa. We were really influenced. I'm from apartheid South Africa, and we were segregated by color. So we were really influenced by Black American culture. But then I really loved, like the Police. And also, from the UK, and I also really loved Prince. And when I talk about Black American culture, of course, Prince is Black American culture, but in terms of hip hop and this kind of area. So I always felt a bit like I saw things from a different perspective. I also couldn't understand why someone would kill me for my color, but there you go.
Those tiny little things,
I'm a big absorber as well. I love people, I love culture, and I love to be able to understand and learn about new things. And I throw that in the mix as well. So I totally can see how that would have been interesting, but also quite hard. I think also what comes with being in spaces where you don't look like everyone else and you think maybe differently, you come from a different perspective, it gives you really layers of resilience. That's the differentiator, I feel. You know what I mean?
Yeah, the resilience I had was very it's something I never really noticed. I just was like, I just keep wanting to do this thing, so I'm just going to keep doing it. And then when I look back at it, I'm like, wow, so many people, I know so many people as well who are just doing different things now. So when I started out, it was like there was a whole bunch of people doing what I was doing, and then all of those people that I know are doing something else now.
We could again list all the areas of accomplishment that comes from that, and that comes from resilience. You know what I mean? And going,
it's a great thing, but
that's my dream. Yeah, it is. Tell me something. Was there a moment that fundamentally shifted from this art curation to what you do now? Did something happen where you're like, pivot? Or was it more of a build towards that? How did that happen?
I think it was a bit more of a build. I joined Instagram like everybody else, and because I wasn't styling, I was like assisting, or I was doing some sort of things, or I was like testing with people. I was really frustrated at how the reference images that I was bringing to shoots were not matching up what I was producing. And I was really hard on myself and really hard on everybody around me. I was like, it just doesn't feel like what I've put together. And it took me a really long time to understand, A, you have to sort of meet the right team to sort of work with people. Absolutely. And B, you're growing, and it's just like, give yourself some time, which I couldn't do. So basically my Instagram was born out of that. So I put up reference images, kind of just like my thought pattern or just things I was into. And then suddenly I would go to sort of like, I remember I was like assisting, and
Mhm.
another assistant came up to me and said, I've been to this place and they've got your Instagram all over their walls.
You
And
on
it
the
was like a
mood board.
French
You on
fashion
the mood
house.
board.
And I was like, I was the mood board, and I was like, what? And I kept
Yeah.
hearing it over and over again, being like,
Great.
it's really weird because you, like, you know, at the time I wasn't going to any shows, I wasn't kind of like visible in that sense, but people had known about me because everyone just kept following this account,
Amazing.
which I thought
Yeah.
was really strange, because when it comes to social media, I tend to sort of, I'm quite into myself. So in terms of just like, I post what I want and then I go. I'm not really looking for dialogue, and I will maybe go back. I might entertain and respond to one comment, but I kind of don't really care what other people think.
Yeah.
So it was just a bit like, I treat it as a visual diary because I speak in a visual language. And I think it was when I started sort of doing that more, and people were starting to notice, and I was getting little commissions where it was like, oh, can you do some research for this? And can you help on this project? Then I was like, oh, this is possibly a thing. And then it sort of built and built and built. I guess the real moment was 2020, which is everybody's moment, where people were like, oh, do you remember that girl that's like smart? Yeah, which was really weird. It was a very strange thing where it was kind of like, people were suddenly like, oh, you're really good. And I was like, I've been really good for about 7 years, but thanks. All the same. And then it's
noticing.
Thanks for noticing. You know, and then people being like, oh my God, I remember being at dinner with you and you were talking about, you know, systemic issues, and like how you were there aren't many people who look like you in the industry. And I sort of just brushed it off with you having a chip on your shoulder, and I was like, no, it's an actual thing. And it was that kind of weirdness where it was like, oh, suddenly the dialogue had changed and I was sort of a lot more visible, which I sort of liked but also kind of hated at the same time.
I hear you.
I'm trying to find a way to be at peace with it.
Yeah. No, I hear you.
But you must do it too.
Yeah, and I felt like 2020, you know, even within my industry of sort of advertising, marketing, communications, you know, it was interesting because I was like, actually, I have a really big body of work before I became also representative of, you know, a different perspective. I've got like 25 years of work before that. And so I was really clear that I wanted people to judge me on my body of work, and not because the conversation had changed that you know, I've been vocally talking about as well for years and years. When I was in big companies, I was like, why is this like this? And how come people, you know, and I said, if I wasn't headhunted, I probably wouldn't have gotten through the application process because I don't have the skills.
100%.
You know, I've got a weird name that doesn't really work. So, you know, it was interesting to see how that shifted. But I was also like, but I'm also have a big body of work behind me that's got nothing to do with that. That's actually hopefully just good work. You know, that. So I hear you. I totally hear you. And I'm glad you were discovered anyway, because now we can all see everything. I'm happy about that.
Which is always nice. Yeah.
How do you think these lived experiences impacted the way you sort of navigate challenges or opportunities that have come your way?
Gosh, I think it's something I'm still trying to work out on a day-to-day basis, and like case by case, because of course the conversation sort of changed and shifted slightly, but I still feel quite up against it. So everything feels quite new, and I feel quite reactionary to sort of situations and changes. And then I guess the challenge is just trying to sort of remain true to what I'm doing and staying grounded and being like, okay, I'm trying to tell stories in this way, and just trying to offer people a slightly newer perspective, because it is this thing of, especially, you know, fashion sphere that I'm in, the people that when I was assisting, the people that are sort of like still at the top are still there, which I think is odd. I think that's strange. I think we should talk about it. Nobody ever wants to. Every time I do, people get really uncomfortable. And I'm a bit like, this doesn't make... And then I look at all the people that I'm inundated with, wonderful people that contact me every day wanting to get into this industry, and I don't know how. My main challenge at the moment is trying to give people hope and positivity when I just don't see the needle shifting fast enough. I know it will. And, you know, like me being on this podcast today is proof of that. You know, and being able to sort of share my story and tell stories to other people. But I worry a little bit because I'm just a bit like, that doesn't make sense, especially in fashion. It's like, how does someone able to, if I'm looking at references that are in the 90s from people who made those editorials, how come they're still styling shows? Or how come they're still taking pictures for campaigns? Nobody wants to say anything. Okay.
Yeah.
What?
Yeah,
Like,
I mean,
that sounds weird.
Yeah, totally. I mean, I think, and it's
Because
yeah.
Can you be a doctor for 50 years? I don't know if you can. So, like,
I mean, my son, it's different but the same. My son's maths teacher is the same maths teacher as my husband's maths teacher, right? And so I was like, but things have changed. And yet, you know, you're still learning the same old from a long time ago when there is new perspectives. Things have changed, you know, and I feel like that adaptability to what's happening in the world maybe reflects the difficulties that some of these companies are having at the moment. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because they are having the same people who are making the same decisions from a different generation and a different time.
Yeah.
And then you look at
and I know why people do it.
I don't know.
I get it, like I understand it, but I still think we've got to move it a little bit, because you just have a lot of people kind of on, you know, you have these top tier people, and then you've got these other people sort of rising up. You get a couple of people that sort of run in through like the back door or the side door, i.e. me, and then there's everybody else that's like wanting the same things, but there's just such a limited amount of space, when really we're talking about creation, we're talking about creativity and expression, and there surely should be a little bit more room for people. And I do, like you said, from a business perspective, it doesn't seem very smart to have 90s mentalities when we are in, you know, 2025. It doesn't. Something's not adding up.
I mean, I think it's weird, and I feel like there's a lot of things that impact and influence people's mindsets and behaviors. You know, adoption of technology is one. For instance, Instagram, you know, that was where your mood was and your visual diary was, and that was your place of discovery. I think things have changed on where discovery happens and where access happens as well, right? So one of the things that I was really clear about when I was working in-house, and even when I was at Adidas, you know, I brought in a whole different team of people, because I was like, we're in sneakers, let's get some people who know sneakers in the business. Why would you let's bring them from London, let's bring them from other places, you know, because I feel like I mean I'm a huge advocate for access, and I'll try whatever I can to be able to do that. But there's also this idea of education internally to go, you know what, this can lead to success. You know, it's so difficult to change the mindsets of companies that were created in the 20th century that are still there today,
it really is.
And therefore, you know, the status quo is the status quo. But, you know, that's why we're out here and we're flying our flags, but it's also exhausting.
It really is. Because it does...
and exhausting as well.
It's like, I think every sort of 3 to 5 business days, someone asks me about, you know, the current sort of fashion landscape in terms of creative directors moving around and how all of them are white. And I call it white man musical chairs, because and it's got to a point where I can't even engage in the conversation because it makes me so angry that I'm like, why don't you just tell me what white person's going to be in, and then I'll call in the clothes, because nobody fucking cares that we're doing the same shit. Nobody cares. Excuse my language, but it's that thing where I'm just a bit like, we're all looking around and nobody thinks this is a little bit weird. Meanwhile, you have a younger generation of people expressing themselves in very different ways. I mean, you know, like I'm chronically online. That is why I'm pretty much good at my job, because I don't put my phone down, sadly. No. But it's like, you know, you look at different sort of modes of social media, like TikTok, like Twitter, and all those kind of things. And there are people just like, rather than going through the traditional methods, being like, do you know what, fuck it, let me just do this and try this thing. And those things are like, they're starting trends, they're starting movements, they're really affecting people's sort of businesses and business models. And it's like, well, why don't we try and look just outside a little bit, instead of, you know, I'm not disrespecting the people that are at the top. I think they're amazing, amazing, they're inspirations. But I do think that we got to mix it up a little bit. So it's like, just, you know, we really do. I think it was last season. I saw there was a post where somebody had put all of the campaigns together, and it was just like 17 pictures of a very thin woman slightly different hair color each time, just up against the white wall. It's like, okay, cool. This is what we're doing. Nobody feels weird about it. Okay,
Fashion 2024. Yeah, exactly.
2024. But it's like, 17 different brands, all the same, all the same. It's just
It's interesting. It's literally so interesting you say that, because in the book I wrote, which is out this year, and I wrote it last year, I call it competition FOMO. And it's basically any brand and business, no matter the industry, fashion, it could be, cars, it could be booze, oh, that company has opened a cafe. Why don't we open a cafe too? I'm like, do you understand that you're all opening cafes?
Yeah.
And for me, yours is different. Yours is like, styling and fashion, the way you've described it. Mine is communication. I'm like, we're all doing the same thing. Can we see that we're all doing the same thing or no? I call it competition.
We're not even remixed.
Yeah, it's weird.
Yeah.
It's very strange.
We're not even remixing it slightly. So it's like, oh, it's slightly different, or someone's put a little spin on it, or like we're just doing the exact same thing and then, changing the label slightly. Yeah. And then people want to, I don't know, it's...
And that's it. I remember back when I used to do fashion PR, and it was like, how do we create things that you are original, but also that, and that was, we were proud that it was original, by the way. We were like, oh my God, that's original. Yeah. Great. Instead of it looking like something else. But also, how can that be recognizable without the logo? How can that be so recognizable as this specific brand if you didn't have the logo on it? You would still go, it's that brand. It's because there was a feeling, and there was a vibe, and there was a message, or whatever it might be, that was really specific to that brand. That for me is like job done. You know what I mean? That's much more interesting than going, I need to make sure that I'm competing with my competitors in the same way. Like, that's just not interesting. I cannot still understand why people feel like that's okay. I really don't.
I need someone to explain it to me like I'm a 5-year-old, because I genuinely don't understand.
I really understand.
I'm just always a bit like, maybe I'm just really stupid. I don't understand. Yeah. I'm like, this can't be cost effective, surely.
Surely. I don't know. Well, hopefully we'll get some answers from this pod, but tell me something about this intersection of self and work. You know what I mean? Because that's something that I go back and forth about. Like, how does your personal values influence your decisions with clients, or even professionally as well? Because sometimes these can be at odds with each other. How do you approach that?
Oh God, not very well. I'm going to be really honest. Not very well. Me and my moral compass are going to keep me poor. Not going to lie. Because sometimes I can do it if I can get it like around in my head. Yeah. And find a way. There's been sort of situations where I've done things, or I've been part of things that I'm not necessarily proud of, and I've been like, in terms of like from a moral perspective. So like, if I had it my way, this would not necessarily be my choice. And in that sense, normally what I can do, I'm like, if there's a financial sort of aspect to it, how can I bring in some new talent? How can I push the sort of narrative a little bit more forward? How can I try and tell the story from my perspective, so it doesn't feel like a completely sort of tone deaf point of view? I have to sort of do things like that a lot. Other times I've just sort of said no to things, and then been like, oh God, this is really scary. This is like, I'm not in a position, if anyone who follows me on Instagram, I go to a lot of dinners and eat out a lot for free and get lots of fancy parties, but I don't own anything apart from some nice clothes. Right? So I'm someone that should be making smarter financial decisions, and sometimes I'll be like, I just can't, because if it doesn't really align with me 100%, or if I can't make sense of it or bring an opportunity to somebody else, or or to somebody who looks like me, I kind of don't want to do it.
Yeah, I think I try and do that as well, because I feel like, listen, these, for me at least, the brands and stuff that I work with, for me, have an ear of the masses. Those are the type of brands that I work with, because they can influence at scale, right? And at mass. Yeah. And I have to like sometimes 100%. Consider why I'm doing what I'm doing. And I do understand, about anything that personally I'm trying to do with that is to try and change a narrative, is to try and move an industry forward. You know what I mean? But it is, sometimes I'm like, is this the place I'm needing to be? But these are, the world that we live in brands and big businesses have huge influence. And so
Yeah,
for
yeah,
me personally, that's the way that I try and qualify. But it is difficult. I've got to be honest. Sometimes
yeah.
I'm just like,
But and
I,
also sometimes it's about
yeah,
you just having your presence there. Like
totally.
maybe that's
Maybe
enough.
that's
It
enough.
doesn't have to be
Yeah,
this whole
yeah,
thing.
yeah.
But like, if I can sort of in my little world try and sort of
That's it.
have some sort of perspective and try and make somebody think slightly differently, I will. But then there's
Yeah,
sometimes where
me
if I
too.
can't see a way of doing it, I should just, and if it keeps me up at night. I remember once somebody asked me to do this job and I said yes to it, and then I was praying that they would say no,
Uh,
praying, because I just genuinely was like, I don't want my name on it. I
exactly.
don't think this
Yeah,
is a good idea. And then I was suddenly like, you know what? I actually just can't do this, because if I'm going to show up and not do my job properly, and I'm
yeah.
not going to be sort of proud of it. So I need to not, But there's been times where I've been part of things where I could see something that I don't like, and I always state my case, because it's like I've got sort of I don't know. I can't help myself. So if I don't like
Mm.
something, everyone will see on my face, and I just say it as soon as possible. And
I
then
know
I'm like,
what.
oh
I
God,
know what.
oh,
The face just tells a story like immediately.
the face tells. I always think I'm being really cool, and everyone's like, can you see your face?
Yeah. In your eyes.
Because I'm like this.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
My son is like, the
It's the
lasers come out
same.
of your eyes. I'm like, how do I? He says, I don't
Yeah,
know. It's just like you can see it, and yeah, it's time to stop. That's really funny
yeah.
that you say that. I
That's the
try really
same.
hard to keep it poker, but then it just sits
Yeah,
there anyway.
I
We'll
think
have
I've
to
got a poker
practice.
face. I haven't.
Yeah,
I
we'll have
really
to
do,
practice.
but
We'll have to
it's in my
practice the mirror.
interest is to just like always say what I feel, and then
Yeah,
if we're going to go along with things, I just have to kind of be like, okay, well, how can I make this sort of work
yeah.
in a way that I feel comfortable? But
That's
it's really hard.
it is. It's super hard. Do you have a personal sort of challenge or something that happened that has shaped this, way of doing things positively? So is there an example where you're on a shoot or something, something's happened and you've used a way to turn it around in a positive way? Is there anything that comes to mind for that?
Oh, I can't think of something that comes to mind. I mean, I think
Mhm.
I've just been very. Actually, do you know what? There's times where I've stood my ground on something, and I've come
Okay.
away from it being like, that was horrific, but actually, that was the making of me and a really good
Right.
idea to do.
Yeah.
Like, because it sort of. There's been shoots I've been on, and I used to do lots of music styling, which I don't necessarily know if I was the best at. Now I think I could approach it in a very different way, but when I was
Brilliant.
first starting out,
Yeah.
I was just like, okay, and then I'd be in a situation that I didn't really like, but didn't have the agency to say anything,
Yeah. Yeah.
and then everyone would be like, why are you pissed off? And it's like, because I fucking hate this whole thing, and I actually don't know how to fix it. And now I'm able to sort of use my words and figure out
Yeah.
what it is, and it was more just kind of like, you know, let's take music for an example. It's when you're styling a talent, it's about building the relationship with that talent. And I work on an idea of trust. So when you book me, if you like my work, it's because you have a certain trust in my eye.
Of course.
I'm not going to spend every moment telling you something's good if I truly believe it's good. I'll definitely tell you why. But I think in terms of music, sometimes it's sort of a landscape, especially in music styling, where you have to kind of reiterate that over and over again, because
Right.
everybody's really insecure. And
Right.
until the public see the thing that you've created, you don't know if it's good. Does that make sense? Like everyone's a bit like it's sort of about generating sales. So if you don't think that you're going to generate enough sales, or if you sort of if the public perception isn't the same as what it is in the room when you're creating the thing, then it can have a huge backlash on everybody involved. And I found that really hard, that space.
So is
And I
that
kept
from
doing.
yeah, is that from the artist? They need validation, external
I think it's
validation.
more.
Is that what
I
it
think
is?
it's the
Yeah.
whole team, and I
The
think
whole
it's just a
team.
case of like
Okay.
you just.
Right.
I think everybody just needs whatever part of you're doing in music. I
Yeah.
find that
Yeah.
everybody needs validation, me included.
Okay.
And what I was finding is that it was like really affecting the decision making that I was
Sure.
doing. And I'm
Sure.
quite decisive when it comes to like, I like what I like. I think this is going to work for you. You know, let's do that. And then you sort of then open it up to the public sphere. So if that person, you know, who's seeing said music video or said performance doesn't like the outfit, then everyone's like, oh, the outfit's bad. It's like, is the outfit bad, or did that person not like the outfit? And I just found that I kept doing those jobs over and over again. And I was like, I come away from them really unsatisfied and really like scared that I don't know what I'm doing, and I need to take myself out of that until I could find a better way of communicating. So it was like hard, but it also made me, because then once I took a break from it and I revisited it and did it again, it didn't feel so personal. I found a way of being able to communicate what I wanted without having to sort of be a yes man, because I think it's weird to just say that someone, you know, to be sort of yesing all the time. I don't think it feels genuine.
No.
Because you should believe what you believe, and people.
No, but I also feel like that comes with experience, doesn't it? You know, now in your career, you know, people are coming to you for that thing. You know, and maybe on when you were doing music videos, you know, it was it's also like they're also, as you said, need that validation. Whereas in fashion, it's about putting it out there in your vision. You know what I mean? Is that what
it's very much like. Well, that, and also kind of like once I'd done one person really successfully, I'd get another person. They'd be like, "I want to look like that person." I'd be like, and I'd be like, "No, but we should make you look like you." And they'd be like, "No, but I want to look like that." And you'd be like, I couldn't sort of work out a way to navigate it where I was giving people what they needed and also coming away from it satisfied. And I think it was very much me being like, this doesn't make you happy the way that you're doing it. You've got to figure out a different way of doing this. And maybe it's about not sort of being like, well, this person asked me, so I said yes. Really, really working out if you could gel with that person, if that person really gets your language and your sort of your communication, and doing it like that and sort of breaking up, making it a bit smaller. But I think had I not sort of taken stance to look at that and also standing my ground as, you know, the stylist that I wanted to be and not be so swayed by what I was giving to people, I would have felt a lot happier. But once I did do that, I then was like, okay, this is a good example. And it's the same as shoots.
It's the same as that FOMO we just talked about. Now started, you know, exactly. Was there any example where you stood your ground, you did it, and there was an unexpected breakthrough or success from that? You know, did any, you know, where someone was like a bit nervous, a bit concerned, but you stood your ground, you're like, this is how you need to do it. And this could be anywhere in your career, by the way. It doesn't only have to be in music. Where there was an unexpected success and they were like, we didn't expect it to work as well as that. Does anything pop to mind?
Maybe I'd say the Italian Vogue cover. I think everyone else was really sort of, I couldn't believe it was happening. And the whole time, I was like, there's no fucking way. Because I remember buying the Edward Enninful issue of Italian Vogue with all the black models on the cover. And I remember going to a bar with my friends and like drinking. Anyway, halfway through the evening, I obviously was drunk and I was like, one day I'm going to shoot the cover of Italian Vogue. And I always remembered that. I always remembered saying that to my friends and then everybody laughing because, of course, what are you talking about? I was like drunk in a bar in Dalston talking nonsense. And then when they asked me, apparently so. But when I got asked to do the shoot, I was like, they must mean a different Italian Vogue because no way. When I was on the Zoom call, it did not click for ages. I was on a Zoom call with all these amazing people who worked at Vogue going, so who would you like to shoot? And I was like, what? And I thought I was pitching to them the prospect of me possibly shooting. I didn't understand what this meeting was about. Wow. I didn't know that they had already agreed for me to start the thing. And then I had a sort of one-on-one call with Martin Parr, who was like, yeah, I really like your work, you're really cool. And I was like, Martin Parr thinks I'm cool.
My goodness.
Sorry?
Hello.
What do you mean? And the whole time I was like, there's no way. So all the lead up to the shoot day, I was like, they're going to cancel. They're going to be like, JK, we fooled you. It's an early April Fool's. It's obviously a joke. And then like Saturday like runs around and we're shooting. I'm also shooting Karen Elson, which is insane.
That's insane.
So she she's really nice to me. And the whole day, it was not clicking that it was going to happen. And then it happened. And I remember like her going, congratulations, this is amazing. And like the next time I see you, we're going to go for a drink and celebrate this properly. And I went, okay, thanks. And then she walked out the door and I burst into tears. So I couldn't, the whole day I was just a bit like, there's no way this is happening. That was definitely, for me, a massive career defining moment.
Yeah.
I don't know if many black women have shot the cover of Italian Vogue either.
I mean, there's
So
so many
that's
layers
also
and
insane.
levels to this, to that
Yeah,
entire experience. You know what I mean? Even
yeah,
someone like Martin Parr, who we all love,
yeah.
and I'm a huge fan, to also, you
Massive.
know, all of these things, like all the different elements that are actually your vision.
Yeah, yeah.
And I love that, and you know, I just love your story about, like, I couldn't believe it was happening as it was happening.
No. Yeah, yeah.
I'm trying to
I just
visualize
kept
that. I can see it. Yeah, totally. Yeah.
I was wandering around the clothes, and I just kept the whole day being like,
Wow.
"There's no way." And then I was like,
Amazing.
This isn't going to be a cover." And then
Yeah.
it was. And then I remember when the cover came to my house, and I was like, and I told my
Oh
mum,
my
and
God.
it was the
Yeah.
first time that it really clicked for her, because before,
Right.
like, I'd show her stuff I'd done in ID, and she'd be like, "That's great. Do they sell at Tesco's? Like, what is this?" And
Yeah.
I remember when I was working at Love, and I couldn't really speak to her that much because I was really busy. I
Yeah.
was assisting Katie at the time, and then I came home with the magazine, like, so proud, and she flicked through it, didn't say anything, and she said, they're not wearing any clothes, they've just got high heels on and cigarettes.
Oh.
What assisting did you do?
Yeah.
I was like,
No clothes on the
Mom,
entire picture. Yeah.
she said, you work in fashion, but there's never any clothes. Everybody's naked. I don't understand.
Hilarious.
And then I remember just like always sort of for years being trying to sort of explain to my mum what I did, and
Right.
she'd only kind of get it if it was someone famous, and then really, which was great, but I wanted her to understand it from a fashion perspective, and that was the first time that she saw it and was like, oh, "This is a really big deal," and I was like, "Yeah."
Wow.
And she told lots of people back in Ghana. It was very sweet for all of us.
I mean, standard. Yeah, amazing. But,
Yeah.
you know, huge. That's huge. Italian Vogue,
Yeah.
you know, the pinnacle of, you know,
Yeah.
of a career, especially within
Yeah.
yours. So literally congratulations on that, and well deserved, to be honest. See,
Thanks.
let's go back to those original weird mood boards. You know, who else
I
would
know, see?
Martin Parr, Karen Elson, and, you know, etc. That's where it comes
Yeah.
from. You know, all good. Tell me about
Yeah.
any work. So would this be an example of a real reflection of your personal identity, that particular cover, or was it other work that you're like, really, this is me. This is
That
my
and
personal
maybe like the first shoot that I did, a shoot that I did with Zong Lin, who's a photographer that I love so much, who I was following on Instagram, that I was sort of obsessed with. And I remember going into the office one day, and this is when we sort of, I think maybe it was like issue 0 of Perfect, and
Wow. Okay.
Katie and I were having a conversation, and I was like, "Oh, have you heard of this person?" And I showed her, and she was like, "Who the fuck is that?" I said, "It's this girl who's in Taiwan. I think she's a girl. I don't know." I said, "Oh, she's been photographed doing shoots for like 100 days or something. She had this challenge, and at the time, Zong had been basically kind of doing these home sort of made photo shoots, you know, completely in her landscape, you know, with friends, like hiring a couple of models, like getting a bed sheet and kind of just putting that up against the rocks, like,
Yeah.
and I thought it was amazing. And I remember like the first time that we worked together, you know, us having like conversations over WhatsApp, and then, you know, me just sending clothes to Taiwan and being like, "I hope this is going to work," and then her coming back with like the most amazing imagery that I'd ever seen. When we worked together, you know, like physically, that was during lockdown, but we worked together physically with Taylor Russell. I couldn't believe, like, it was such an amazing day. It was it was amazing because she was just up for everything. And you know, when you're like working with a famous person, you're like, there's no way they're going to say no, they're going to chicken out, they're going to be like, maybe not, like, it's, you know, you don't want to push them too much. And I showed her the brand, and I was like, "Is there anything that you don't want to wear?" And she went, "No, I like all of this." And I went, "Oh, okay." And that was, so it was just kind of, "Do you want to put this one on?" And she was like, "Yeah, sure." And then we did, it was lots of sort of small, it was lots of water and lots of sort of small spaces, and she got into tiny boxes in clothes that I should not have been getting wet. I obviously got wet. And then I had to like beg my friends afterwards, going, "I'm really sorry, but look at the picture." And they'd be like, "Do you know what? The picture's actually fucking banging, so it's fine."
Amazing.
But it was that day of like I remember when she kind of got in, she got into this sort of makeshift pool on the studio, and everyone was just like, wow. And it was just silent. And Zon was taking these incredible pictures. And I just remember sort of seeing the imagery and couldn't wait to like post them. I was like, I can't wait till everyone else sees them. And I couldn't, like, I still look at those pictures now and I think, fuck, they're so good. They were just they're really different, which scared me for a little bit, because I don't know if I'm always like, always overcritical of my styling, but it's fine. I think my focus is always trying to make an image that you can never forget, and I never forget those images. And people talk to me about those images all the time, and I think, okay, that's a real moment. And it had all the things that I liked in there. I like color, I like different textures. I don't look like it, obviously. I'm dressed in black as per usual. And always. It was like it's a bit offbeat, it's a bit sexy, it's a bit confusing, and I was like, that is probably me in one. If someone asked to describe me, it'd probably be that shoot.
I feel like sometimes it's hard to sort of like reflect your own personality, especially for clients or especially for whatever company you're working for. How do you sort of balance personal inspiration and personal, visions with sort of like industry trends or like demands from the job, client, whatever?
I try not to follow them because I just don't. I feel like I'm at the landscape at the. I've been thinking about this for ages, actually.
Yeah.
There are loads and loads of amazing stylists, but when you look at all the work sort of looks the same, because in order to kind of get further in the industry, you almost have to produce those pictures. So it'll be like, I've got to do a picture of a girl with funny green tights on and pants over her head, and this, that, and the other. I can do that. I like doing that, but that's not necessarily my main bag. But if people don't see enough of it, they don't categorize. They find it really hard to categorize you. So what I find really hard is my book will go up against a lot of people, and sometimes it doesn't get through for that reason, because I can't see enough of that particular shoot. And recently I was like, maybe I should do one of those shoots. And then I was like, well, it doesn't really feel like me, does it? It just feels like I'm sort of just doing this thing to show people that I can do those things. When it comes to clients, I sort of just I'm very like, ask a bunch of questions, show them mood boards and examples of me doing said thing they've asked to do, and then do it again and narrow it down until I'm 100% correct that I give them what it is they want. But also, people don't know what they want until they see it in front of them, and they change their minds all the time,
Yeah. I find that quite a lot, it's almost like you put ideas forward to clients, and it's almost like they need to see what they don't want versus understand what they do want.
What they do want.
And you finesse that. So it's very similar, different industries, but very similar in terms of being able to showcase, and sometimes throw in a completely different perspective. I think sometimes that really sort of, get somewhere really far, which I think can be really exciting. But of course, you still have to have it within the spectrum of safeness to something to really different, maybe a small push somewhere, step by step. Tell me about within your own personal either career as a leader and or having a leader, a manager of yours. What do you think the role of empathy is within relationships, be it collaborations, be it your manager, be it yourself as a leader for, someone you're managing or whatever? Tell me about empathy, because we talked quite a lot about resilience and understanding and being in places that weren't set up for you, right? What does it mean for you if someone can be empathetic in how they deal with you, or how do you kind of foster that yourself if you do?
I mean, I think I tend to foster it myself. I think it's really hard to foster empathy or to kind of encourage empathy out of sort of managers and bosses because they have different experiences. So I can explain to someone till I'm blue in the face that, especially in fashion, because it's so unregulated, that a lot of toxic traits happen. And I don't necessarily think they happen because people are bad people. I think they happen because they've always happened. Do you know what I mean? And nobody's gone, maybe we shouldn't do this. Everyone's just doing it. And I never forget, actually, when somebody said to me that I shouldn't be friends with other black creatives because they have what I want and I have what they want. And us uniting. I won't say who.
From someone.
Yeah, it was a serious comment. And they were just a bit like, well, you want to be the only one. And I was like, but I'm not the only one. And I think it's a bit, I'm not the only one.
Yeah.
I'd love to think that I was really, really unique, but I'm not that unique. I'm actually just like everybody else.
Yeah.
And I think that thing and that sort of that competition, like you said, that is fostered in the industry is quite toxic and not necessary. And there's got to be a better way of doing things. I try when I'm really when I have assistants on board to sort of make them feel included. If I think that they're really good, I will recommend them for as many jobs as seemingly possible. I think it's really important to sort of pay things forward and put people in the right places if you can. That's like really important to me, and just to encourage people as well. But I do think it's really hard to sort of do that in the fashion space now because, like I said, everyone's coming from different experiences, and the status quo is the status quo. So it's really hard to break that. And you will get people that, you know, there's so many people that have been so wonderfully kind to me and really consistent. But you sort of, weirdly, the higher up I go, the more I understand why people behave the way they do.
Yeah.
I don't condone it, but I'm like, you don't know any better. You don't know any better. Like, you've no understanding of how sort of detrimental those things are. So I'm kind of glad and like a lot more thankful that people who are coming up are a lot kinder to each other and don't have those same sort of mentalities.
Do you feel that's changed then over the years? Do you think people are a bit more understanding and empathetic and wanting to collaborate versus overly compete? Do you think that that's coming through? Is that a generational kind of shift or no?
I think it's a generational kind of shift for sure, but I also think it's because people have their voices now and they aren't afraid to call out those sort of toxic behaviours. So everyone's minding their P's and Q's because you kind of fucking have to. You can't go on doing the things that you were doing in the past now. There's no space for it. There's not a home for it, and it's frowned upon. So I would love to say it's because people suddenly, you know, understood
At the
empathy.
moment, yeah.
I don't get it. I don't get it because I have empathy for everyone and everything.
Yeah.
So I don't understand how you can turn it on and turn it off. You can have less empathy for people, but to have none whatsoever is fucking crazy to me. But you know, I don't have the same experiences as someone else. I don't get it. I'm a bit like, you like this person, but they did this to you. But this person who hasn't, you don't like them. I don't get it. And you don't think those two people are humans? It's very strange to me. But it's also, rather than trying to, I used to spend ages trying to work it out. I have now given that up. It's not my job to work it out. My job is to try and sort of associate and align myself with people who think the way that I think. Because that's a lot safer and a lot, you know, just a lot more peaceful.
I think also, you know, I keep on trying to go, you know, I'm not trying to, there's always this picture that I see and I use it in quite a few decks, and it's a weird example, but Michael Phelps, the swimmer, the Olympic swimmer, you know, he was winning in the pool and he's looking forward.
Yes.
His competitor behind him is looking at him, but he's looking forward.
Yes.
And almost this idea of we could be worried about the competitor. The competitor's worried about him, but he's the one going, you know what, I need to do what I need to do here. And I'm not going to be kept back by worrying about what this person is doing here. And I feel like that's come with age a bit for me. I'm like an experience. I'm like, I'm just going to try and do the small bit that I can do within what I can do instead of worrying about, you know, overly concerning myself about things that I can't actually change. You know what I mean?
But I also think what's really weird is that people don't, what I think is really odd is that when it comes to those kind of things, like you know, do I want to be the best in the world? Yeah. Do I want to be legendary? Absolutely. Do I want my name to sort of go on for ages and ages in this industry? 100%. But if I sat there worrying about what every other person was doing, I'd lose my fucking mind. And rather than sort of just like, I think what people tend to do in this industry is like weird, crafty things that I think, why don't you just spend time being better? Why don't you spend time being better than the other person?
Exactly.
Like, and you know, getting your head down and focusing rather than spending all of this time trying to dilly-dally, trying to sort of psych people out, trying to do all these kind of weird sort of tricks that feel very high school. That, I mean, that's what most sort of life is, isn't it? It's just high school over and over again. But as you said, as you get older, you just realize that this feels taxing. So let's just I'm going to face my front and focus on what's going on in front of me, rather than anything else.
And literally, ever since I saw that picture, I was like, and I share with my clients, I'm like, this for you is also your competition with other brands. Stop worrying 100%. About them. Look forward and do what you need to do. Yeah. So really interesting, this evolving perspectives. And can you talk me through, just for an example, from the beginning, like your personal views, have they evolved over the years? And how has that shaped the trajectory of your career? You know what I mean? So your career has gone obviously up and up and up, starting from wherever it is, Instagram to Italian Vogue. Yeah. That's quite a journey. Quite a quick one. Yeah. Has your personal views evolved with that trajectory, do you think? About
I think I've been able to just I think sort of because my career and my life are very intertwined, I am trying to separate them a lot more now. Yeah. Just because I don't want to be defined by my career. There's lots of other things about me, but I've just got to figure out what those things are. Yeah. I think that my ideas have remained the same, and my passion has remained the same. But now I have a lot more understanding of why things are the way they are, how I can change them or affect change, and kind of where I can put my energy. I think that's what has really sort of helped, especially over the last couple of months. I sort of just realized that it's like, okay, this is what I want. These are the kind of stories I want to tell. I really want to keep building relationships with people and discovering new things and trying to sort of tell different stories. And if I want to do that, I need to sort of align myself with people who want to do that, rather than contribute to telling the same story over and over again. So on a personal level, I've just sort of been able to sort of look around and be like, okay, the industry is wonderful in so many ways. It's quite tragic in loads of other ways. Let's try and focus and be as positive as we can.
Yeah, it's so frustrating because it's such a big expression. Like fashion is self-expression, creative expression. It is inclusive, should be. It's all the things. It's all the things. It's all the things around creativity. It's all the things around humanness, and it feels like you want that to be the most free place that it could be, the most free place that it could be. If you could change one thing in the industry, what would it be now? If you could change one thing that could change, for you. Yeah.
I would free up space for other people. I really would. What I want is for big luxury brands to not cosplay parts of my culture and parts of people who look like me's culture, and actually have us in the room, like properly have us in the room. Don't have people in the room for lip service. Like have those people in the room, decision making, and being able to push things forward. Because right now it's a bit like, I don't know, fashion shows, you want to play Drake songs, you look around, there's fucking 3 people of colour in the room. Like, that doesn't make sense. We have like 7, we'll have maybe a max 7 black models in a show, and we talk about how progressive it is, but it's not. We'll have like 1 plus size model who isn't really plus size, and we've put this label on this person who just actually wants to fucking exist and model and be beautiful. And and have a place in the world. And it's fucking stunning. Like, they fell from the sky, and we put all of that pressure on that one person. Like, no, we need to, this cracking open the door is fucking bullshit. It's either you bolt it and you don't have people like me in this industry, or if you've opened it, which you have, you open it properly. You open it properly, rather than this thing of like, I shouldn't feel capped right now. This is, whereas it's the start, it's kind of the start of my career. I've only really been sort of hyper visible for about 5 or 6 years. So 5 or 6 years in, I shouldn't feel like, oh, well, where else can I go? Like, that's insane. It should be the sky's the limit. Right? I shouldn't be like, oh, I should just go home now and tell this story about this one thing. It should feel like there is more scope, but there isn't, and I'm desperate for that to change. Because with every person like me, if it took me, maybe about, I'm going to say it took a cool 10 years for me to kind of get visible, to get to the stage I'm at now. What happens to my assistant that's 24? Like, what happens to them?
Totally.
How long are they going to have to wait? Like, so that's what I really would love for that to change.
Yeah, but, I mean, I feel like it's everything we've talked about, and I feel like it's always hard and easier for us to talk about because we are from those places. You know what I mean? We are from those places, and it can be frustrating when you know the added value that you could bring to something. You know,
Yeah, of
whoever
course.
is marginalized, I know the value. I've seen the you know, the
Yeah,
output, and yet still it's a there's a need to justify these things, which can be really frustrating. So you know, I hear you. For me, access,
yeah,
discrimination, access, probably because I'm where I'm from, is huge. You know,
yeah,
same as
yeah,
you maybe. We had no access. We've got talent where I'm from. I mean, there are
yeah.
singers, there are dancers, there are, you know, designers, creators, and there is no access for them. There's no access for them, and it's
No,
just always really
it's
something
insane.
that, you know, burns. It burns in my heart, like literally so hard, and I'm constantly talking about it. And you know, but the gates need to be open, and those decision making areas need to be changed and need to be sort of like just have different perspectives. Isn't that more interesting in the
Yeah.
world anyway? You know, I don't know.
Even
I
if
feel
it's
like if
not
I
even
had the
like
same people, yeah, around me all the time, I mean, I would just be bored.
yeah, and even if it's not even even if it's not interesting from a sense of commerce, you want to make more money, right? This surely would make you more money.
Totally.
Surely,
Yeah. Yeah.
surely
No.
this would be like a better perspective.
Yeah, 100%. So I'm hear you, behind you, and it's exhausting because sometimes it just feels like there's a lone voice out there just saying this thing over and
Yeah.
over again and wondering how it can happen. But in a way, it needs to happen almost. And I talk about this all the time, like mentorship over championship. I'm like, I need a
Yes.
champion. You know, I need someone to put my name in these spaces,
This is
where
what I
I'm not
mean.
only me,
It's
you know, whoever else, you know, we need champions. We don't even need
yeah,
mentors
yeah.
so much. That's great, but
I
championship
keep.
for me
I
is different.
literally.
Yeah,
I, I had the same conversation with somebody a
yeah,
couple of days ago, and I was like, "It's really lovely when people send me really nice words, but you know what? I'd love you to do. Go tell your mates. Go tell
that's
your
it.
mates.
Yeah,
You know, when you're at dinner, go tell them. Go and tell
yeah,
them." Because the more
yeah.
people that you tell, the better situation I would be in, the better situation other people would be in. Like,
That's
it's
it.
not. And also, I think when people hear me say it, I think people think I'm talking sort of just about me. I'm not talking just about me. I'm talking about the future generations of people after me. Because what we're doing is selling people a dream that you can come in and do this stuff at this industry, but really, actually, there's a glass ceiling, but the glass ceiling is laced with concrete, and we
Yeah,
really, really have to do something about it. I think we will. I think it's moving. I
I
think
think so.
you know things are definitely happening. I think it's really positive. I just think more people need to we need more action and less sort of lip service.
Yeah, I mean that's always going to be, you know, that you know, all of this is
Yeah,
great, but unless it leads to something else, then it's just this. And that for me is
yeah.
okay, but also it just needs to shift forward. Tell me something about what you want people, professionally and personally, to take away from your story. What would you like that
Oh,
that takeaway to be from, you know, your particular and unique story?
I think it would be that there are many different ways to be black. There are many different ways to be a woman. There are many different ways to be plus size. Not all of them have to stick into this really narrow boxes. I think I'm a testament of that. Um, I also just think it's about giving the underdog a chance. Um,
You might be surprised.
every yeah, every part of my life, and like when I was at school, I remember, I never told anybody I wanted to do stuff in fashion because I
Right.
knew that people looked at me and they were like, "We don't understand."
Yeah.
And now everyone's like,
Yeah.
"Oh wow, you did this thing." They're like, "Oh, that's weird. That weird girl that never spoke to anyone who had headphones on the entire time is doing this thing." And I think it's
Right.
just about kind of looking around and really, really just looking at other people, and you'll get a slightly different story, which is got to be a little bit more refreshing than the same stories that we've been telling for the last 20, 25 years. And
Can't
maybe to
imagine.
other people who, oh,
I'm
and to
thinking,
people who look like me,
yeah,
maybe just have some hope that
yeah. And I feel like,
you can
and this
do
is the
things different.
this is the question, because I find also that there is a bit of a cultural block in um, different ethnicities where there is the idea that creativity and art and fashion and stuff is not a real job, right? So there's this
Yes, yes,
cultural,
yes.
like, also, you know, one thing is the industry, the other is this cultural pressure, you
Oh
know,
yeah.
where these, you know, it's like, what, fashion, is that how you going to live, you know, this kind of idea. Did you find
Yeah.
that coming from your
Oh my god.
background?
My mum, my brothers and sisters, they were just like, "You you have to stop doing this job, because I was like doing it for ages. I wasn't getting paid. They were like, you have to stop doing this job. Obviously, now that I'm semi-successful, they were like, oh wow, you're like successful. That's kind of crazy. And I was like, it does. I kept thinking to them, it does pay. It will pay. It just takes a while. And then like once the work, once it gets moving, it gets moving really well. But I think culturally, my mom was like, could you not just do anything else? Anything else? She wasn't kind of like, you need to be she's like, she didn't, because obviously when I like chose the subjects I wanted to be doing at uni, she was again just like, what do you mean you want to be an art curator? How many black art curators have you seen? And I was like, none. She was like, so then why are you doing this thing? And it's like, because I'm really interested in it and I really want to do it. I think maybe it's like, don't let sort of spaces where you can't see yourself be a barrier. Yeah, don't let that stop you.
Because I think with that, because my next question was going to be, what would you say to your younger self about your personal experiences so far?
Oh God, maybe that all the weird things I didn't like about myself are now the things that earn me quite a bit of money.
Love that.
Which is quite weird. All those weird things you didn't like.
Be weird. Come on,
Carry on being weird. It's absolutely fine. And also, everyone is weird too.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Everyone is weird. Exactly. I love that.
Everyone is weird too. I'm not nearly as weird as I thought it was. Yeah.
You're not alone.
We're all weird. Yeah, it's fine.
One last question, Jeanie. I'm just really enjoying this conversation. What does success look to you now? Like, tell us about what it could have been before and what it feels like now. What do you think that is for sort of, I guess, before, now, and maybe the future? What are your thoughts on success and what that means?
Success before was getting an editorial.
Okay.
It moves every single time. Every time I achieve something, I'm like, oh, now I want something else. So it was, I did a couture show once in Paris, and I was like,
wow.
Oh, maybe I could do another one of those. Yeah. That was quite crazy. I want to style a massive fashion show, and I want to do more global campaigns. I want to test myself, and I want to be scared. And I think I want to be in a position where I'm like, ooh, if I am not on the ball, I'm going to fuck this whole thing up. I want to feel like that for a moment.
Yeah, right.
Just so I can kind of like get the sort of adrenaline pumping. But yeah, success now I think it means more. Before it was just getting a certain amount of things, and now it's about having the opportunity to create and to tell stories and to work with people that I really like and admire. Yeah. So it's changed slightly, but it's weird how much it changes.
It does. That's what I was thinking. If I think about what success was before and now, it feels quite different. And but it's only, you can only do that when you reflect back. You know what I mean? And I think that's what I'm trying to do as well with this conversation. I feel like that growth and that journey along the career path and life are so connected, and it's just interesting for me to understand everyone's stories. That everyone's got such a unique story. Really, really loved this. Thank you so much for taking the time out. And
thanks for having me.
Sharing the story with us. And we will hopefully catch up really, really soon again. Thank you so much. Cheers.
Yeah, thank you.